Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Maple Minds podcast. My name is Monique May, and with me, I have Calvin Stevens and Smarshy. First, we want to start the day off by acknowledging the land in which we are broadcasting from. And when I say the land that we are broadcasting from, Maple Minds and myself are located on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Sanghees, and the Esquimalt nations. We acknowledge the ancestors of these lands, and we ask each and every one of you across Turtle Island that honor the ancestors of those lands and your ancestors as we go forward. We hope that you enjoy our program today. We are going to be talking about the new cabinet and about treaties. We have Calvin, who is joining us from Unamagi. Actually, I believe he is in New Brunswick, so I will let him say hi, and then I will let Smarshy say hi as well and introduce herself and say the territory that she is from.
Hi, my name is Calvin Stevens. I reside in the unceded territory of Unamagi, but right now I'm on the unceded territory of New Brunswick, which is also Mi'kmaq too.
Hello, I am Marsh. I am on Treaty 7, home of Rubicon, and I'm in Alberta.
We would also like to bring attention and mention today is Moose Hide Campaign Day across Canada. It has been an amazing day. Over 300,000 people across Canada actually fasted to end violence against women and children. This is a genocide and an epidemic that is facing our country, and we have to work together. I raise my hand to the Moose Hide Society and their campaign day. It's been an amazing day. I participated myself, and thank you. Now we're going to jump into government. As we all know, this week, Mark Carney unveiled his new cabinet. And I have been praying for a while that we would have a new Crown Indigenous Relations minister. That's if I'm praying for a new minister, I think it says it all. I'm not going to get into name calling, just that I'm very, very thankful that we have 3 new Indigenous women's voices in ministry. Rebecca Alty is our new minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. And for those of you who have been familiar with what has happened in Yellowknife during the evacuations and the fires, Rebecca was the mayor. So she has proven that she can rise above a crisis. She has been there for the people time after time. I am really excited to see what she's going to bring to government. Next, we have Rebecca Chartrand. Rebecca has been called to be the Minister of the Northern and Arctic Affairs, as well as the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency. And she is Anishinaabe and from Quebec. Bringing that voice to the table is going to be powerful. Now we have Mandy Gall Masti, who is our new Minister of Indigenous Services. She is actually the head of the Grand Council of Cree, and she is from Quebec. So Mark Carney has actually done what he said he was going to do, which I am very thankful for. He said that he would walk with Indigenous people and bring us to the table. I'm excited. Calvin, how do you feel about this?
During the election, First Nations rose up and saved this country from the same fate as the United States. And I think Mark Carney realizes that. So First Nations, for the first time in history, got involved in federal politics and showed up big. We've been telling so many First Nations across the country to get involved. You have to get involved if you want a seat at the table. It's no point living in a country, even though a lot of reservations never got involved in federal policies because it's not our system. We have to adapt to the change in environment. We have to adapt to 2025 and get involved and get seats at the table, because we can't continue to run a government and make decisions for people that they have little or no idea about. Now, with these 3 women, 3 Indigenous women, and a lot of our Indigenous communities are matriarchal. So that I am very happy about. We got 3 Indigenous women in there. A lot of us Indigenous communities are used of women leading the charge. I can't be any prouder than I am at this moment for these women to be at the table. I also noticed that their placements, where they come from, is very strategic. Isn't one of them coming from Manitoba? Manitoba, what's happening in Alberta is spilling over. I would say one of the reasons why Mark Harney picked somebody from Manitoba, we have to shore up that province to prevent whatever virus Daniel Smith is pushing to prevent that from spilling over to that territory. We have one person from the Arctic. That's also very strategic. The Arctic is one of the biggest resources of oil in the world. This is why the United States wants it so bad. But we are not the only ones. The United States isn't the only one. We have to realize that our next door neighbor is Russia. When you look at the globe, everyone's used to the flat map, and Russia's way over on the other side of the world. It's not, it's literally right above our heads. If you look at the globe and a three-dimensional map, Russia is our neighbor and the United States is our neighbor. So those two countries are trying to get the resource rights of that area because that reserve will last this earth for generations to come. And that's why Trump wants Greenland so bad. And Quebec showed up. They showed up and they saved us. Not only Indigenous communities in Quebec, but Quebec as a whole, too. And if there's any Quebecans listening out there, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Quebecans and First Nations community stood up and got this done. How do you feel about this, Mark?
I'm very proud of Mark Carney. It took a lot of courage for him to do what he did. And I say this with love in my heart. I thought it was lip service at first because it was, we all know the government system before. It's lip service before it's actually action. And I couldn't be prouder to have 3 Indigenous women leading Indigenous issues in Parliament. And that makes me very happy because it's known that we now have a stronger voice and it's only going to get stronger and it's only going to get louder. And yes, while Alberta failed us, Quebec held us up. And that's a big deal for me. It's just a big check mark in my eyes, you guys. I couldn't be prouder to be where I am right now.
One of the biggest things in the Arctic, too, we have to build military bases there. There's no two ways about it. This is the biggest reason why Mark Carney secured that over the horizon radar. We have to shore up security in the Arctic, and having a First Nation woman from the area would be better able to facilitate dialogue between First Nations there and the territory and everybody in general in that area. We have to shore up and we have to build infrastructure for oil and gas and pipelines. And we have a First Nation woman from Quebec that can also facilitate in that. And again, but Manitoba, I think, is just to basically shore up that area and prevent from whatever Daniel Smith is pushing. I'm really disgusted at her.
I think there's definitely, I guess you could say, a new way of doing business in our federal government. And I was reminded today, we were talking about trauma. I was in a session and we were talking about how trauma can be caused when federal government comes in and they come to the table. So they make us think that we're there to negotiate, but they give us 2 options. So the first option is we're going to put a pipeline through your territory. If you allow us, we will hire X amount of people from your reserve and we will give you X amount of dollars. The next option they can give you is we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I really am hopeful that we will see different communications with the Carney government, especially with 3 strong matriarchs leading the way. Marcy,
Yeah.
what do you feel about that?
I think it's going to be a big change for the Indigenous community. I think it's a great idea. I couldn't be prouder of these 3 women taking spots where they belong. Just like in our community where matriarchal should be, that's exactly where they need to be at the head of the table because they can negotiate for our people. Nobody's going to negotiate better for our people than the matriarchal system that we have. I couldn't be prouder of them.
Paddling my canoe. Did you do a deep dive on each individual? Could you give us a breakdown of their history, of their accomplishments, and so we can discuss each individual?
I didn't do a deep dive and I don't want to put preconceived notions out there. I want to walk with them professionally and personally in this path.
I was just wondering, because I've been on the road, so I didn't have a chance to do a research on them. But I'm very curious as who they are, what they're about, and just basically learning about them, because people live through actions. And you can say you're going to do this and you do that, but when you live on a path of action, that's who you are. And that's what I wanted to learn a little bit more about. But like I said, I've been on the road, been conference there, conference here. I just haven't had time. When you look at the table, though, at least First Nations are at the table helping to run this country. And you know what? When you think of it, that's a true sign of reconciliation. Walking the path together, making decisions together.
And if I can add something, I've been talking to a lot of the Indigenous creators, Calvin, Treaty Bird, Paddling My Canoe, ZB, Absorbed, Missy, a whole bunch of them. And the way I see it, it's not only negotiating for Indigenous people in our country, it's for everyone who's non-Indigenous in our country. It doesn't just affect us, it affects the whole country if we don't run the way we're supposed to. And I think I haven't done a deep dive either. I'm with paddling and walking with them personally and professionally, but I'm also a true believer that your character says more about you than anything. And if you stick to your word, people will follow a lot more. And I think that's a big thing that we have to understand. It's not just for Indigenous people, it's for everybody, Indigenous, everybody who comes to this country. We need to work together to save this country and this land because Mother Earth is crying and we need to fix her. But she doesn't cry because climate change is a thing. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is an actual thing and we are hurting and we need to fix this land.
I think we woke up the beast when we called to action all First Nations across the country. We're involved now. We're invested. We're not going anywhere. And you can bet money on it that more and more Indigenous people are going to get involved federally, provincially, and we're going to see more and more First Nations in government and at the table. This is the first historic moment. We've got our foot in the door, thanks to Mark Carney. That's all we needed. Just the foot in the door.
Absolutely. That's all we needed was the foot in the door. And now we can leave them the way that they were supposed to lead.
Right.
Standing together, side by side, not in front, not in back. Our voices are going to be heard. And that's all that matters.
Exactly. These women have Indigenous knowledge, and Indigenous knowledge and the way of thinking is completely different from European way of thinking. So Mark Carney, the way he formed his cabinet, you have to really respect the guy. He formed his cabinet with 15 of the old, 15 of the new. Being in business for so long, he knows you've got to have the stability of the old and get things done and get these things done quickly. But you also need a lot of the new for new ideas and for a generation that thinks outside the box. So with that being said, he's got a perfect combination of that. Then you have a balance of both Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledge and the way of seeing things. So the non-Indigenous way of seeing things is more linear. Like it's got to be this or that. No other two ways. Whereas Indigenous knowledge and the way of seeing things is more of a cycle. Everything is connected. Everything is ran in a cycle and everything affects everything else. So with having that perspective, that Indigenous perspective in that cabinet is going to be an asset.
What are your thoughts, Annalise?
I'm just, like I said, I'm overwhelmed with hope and optimism because this is historically the first time we've had Indigenous peoples sitting in as Crown Indigenous Relations Minister and Indigenous Services. It always just frustrated me that they would appoint people that have no connection to community. How can you serve us if you have not walked with us?
Yeah. For generations, everybody was saying, oh, get over residential schools. Oh, get over
Yep.
what's called Indian day schools. Get over Indian agents running your community. Basically, we've been living that same mindset and framework right up until 2025 because we've had decisions made for us by other people that has never understood our perspective or the way we view things. But at least now there's a start, right? So everyone's complaining. Don't you guys are always crying about all this and that's the past? No, it's not the past. It's the past now after 2025. After the election, now we have a cabinet that has First Nation women on it. So at least now we can start making decisions from our perspective. Just like when you teach history, we're teaching history from the lens of Europeans. So right now, my son's in archaeology. He wants to do history from our perspective, from the Mi'kmaq perspective, and tell our story. And the women in the cabinet now will be able to tell our story and help form decisions for us.
Not to mention, Calvin, they've had 158 years since the inception of Canada to treat our people with dignity, respect, and equality. What makes you think in 2025, if we didn't have that representation that we got thanks to the Carney government, what do you think would have happened for another 100 or how many years we have left?
You know what? We wouldn't have another 100 years. I know for a fact and deep down inside, and it's already happening in my province, and it's happening in Alberta. It's happening everywhere. These conservative governments are openly disobeying treaty rights, openly going against everything that we stand for, openly going against democracy and representation of people. Mark Carney didn't get elected, we would be in a world of trouble. We would
Oh,
be in the
absolutely.
same boat as the United States. In the United States now, they were talking about Pam Bondi and the ICE czar, whatever, already spoke, and that they are in agreement that they're going to imprison and charge two Democrat senators for
Yeah.
just being at a protest. Like, this is ridiculous. That is no longer a democracy. This is terrifying. And for the first time in history, we have an enemy state at our border. Don't be fooled. Don't thinking that it's still our friend. No, that state is an enemy state, and we need to shore up our security. And we have to do that even with misinformation and disinformation. We need legislation passed so we don't have foreign interference from American backed corporations and American backed actors like Pierre Poilievre and Daniel Smith to divide Canada just to hand over Canada to Donald Trump.
Calvin, you make a good point because I don't know what would have happened had Pierre got in. I don't. And I'm glad Canada took gold that night. Mark Carney won. It's the first time I can breathe having a liberal government. And I can say that proudly, I was a part of that. Our nation was a part of bringing home gold. Regardless of what people think, we didn't vote for just us. We voted for every citizen in Canada. That means the Indigenous community, the non-Indigenous community, the Black community, everyone that seeks refuge in our country, we voted for them. And this is what we have to do now moving forward. Because I've also heard that without truth, you can't have reconciliation. And that's what we need. We need the truth to come out and people to open their eyes. And then we can move forward with reconciliation. And that's all we need to do. Let's keep bringing it home.
Yeah, that night, Mark Carney didn't win that night. Canada won that night. There's a lot of legislations being introduced in Quebec. I'm curious to see if all the other provinces are going to adopt something similar. And it's a legislation on blocking foreign interferences in the spread of misinformation and disinformation, because that's the conduit they have been using to influence the masses. We can't blame it on the people that were influenced by that. They've had trauma, they were mad, they're angry, they're tired, and they just want to change, but they didn't realize what the threat was. So now they can see clearly in the United States. So I don't think Pierre Poilievre is crying in the background there. He was in one of his videos, he was like, Mark Carney, steal some more of my ideas. Oh my God, what a Suki.
I
Really?
know. What
A
a fly guy.
Suki. What a weak Suki of a man. Come on. You lost. Hold your head up high. Go for it again another 4 years. But no, instead of acting like a man and taking the loss like a man, he's crying and soaking and trying to weasel his way in again. That's not being a man. That's being weak. And that's being pathetic.
Now we need to come together to keep him out of Alberta and out of the federal government. And we need to do that collectively again, because we need to do this for Canada, because we know what his objective is for our country. And putting him in Alberta is just going to feed the fire of Danielle Smith's vision of separating.
And I think that brings us to a good segue to talk about the treaties.
So the treaties, okay? I know a lot of people, a lot of uninformed people say, oh, your treaties are old, your treaties get over it and stuff like that. People have to understand treaties exist today and Canada exists today on the foundation of those treaties. If you deny treaties, or if you don't say treaties exist or they're not valid, then you're essentially saying that Canada isn't valid, that Canada doesn't exist. So that is probably one of the most important things that the general masses have to realize. Yes, there's treaties. And yes, there is a Canada based on those treaties. You can't have Canada without the treaties, and you can't have treaties without Canada.
It's like I've been saying, Calvin and Mo and Polly. Canada wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the Indigenous people welcoming the settlers, and the treaty is being signed by nation to nation, by non-Indigenous and Indigenous people signing those treaties. You wouldn't have Canada today. People need to really look at the treaties and not just read what they want to read, all of the treaties, but also read Section 35 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's in there. The treaties say it all. And if you're going to sit here and listen to what you want to listen to, you're going to be uninformed. It's a sad thing that people are not informed enough about treaties and how the fucking to Canada came.
And a lot of it too, they're not informed. Conservatives and conservative-minded people are using it as rage bait for angry, frustrated Canadians, Canadians that are suffering. They'll tell them like, oh, they don't pay taxes and they get free stuff and they get to trade and get special treatment and they get to fish wherever they want. And they just rage bait angry, disenfranchised Canadians without telling them the whole story. They're picking parts of the treaties and saying, oh, they get special treatment. So there's a lot of animosity between First Nations and non-First Nations. Let's take, for example, here in Yarmouth, in Nova Scotia, the last part of Nova Scotia is Yarmouth, and it's riding. It was the only riding that turned blue, and it's the only riding. There is widespread racism, widespread hate towards First Nations, because First Nations has the right to fish and hunt whenever, wherever they want to make a livelihood. But because of that, non-First Nation fishermen were angry and jealous of that. But rather explaining to them why that is, they were fed rage bait. Oh, look at all the First Nations. They're making bank and getting rich off of all of the fishing that they're doing. No, our fishermen, all First Nation fishermen, is less than 1% of the total fishing industry. We can't get rich off of it. We're not making bank off of it. We're just getting by. And this is generations and generations of our treaties being denied. Our people were starving. Our people were poor, where the rest of these fishing oligarchs were making millions and millions of dollars. And because we're starting to encroach on their millions just to give a little crumbs for us to get by, they're making a big fuss of it and feeding a whole bunch of lies to these poor fishermen that also depend on fishing. All the misinformation and the hate is started by big fishing captains and organizations, and they're trying to separate and divide people rather than bring people together, which is absolutely disgusting.
And not to mention, it almost seems like they're feeling a little bit of how we've been feeling from the inception of Canada when the settlers finally came here till the treaties were signed with Canada. And then, boom, they feel a little bit uncomfortable, and it's their uncomfortability that fuels their racism. And that's the sad part. And it is truly disgusting. I don't want to live in a world where we're hated because of who we are. Everyone should just accept everybody, in my honest opinion.
But it's not even being uncomfortable. There's nothing that stops them from still catching the same quota that they have always had. They are just angry at sharing. There's enough resources in this efficient industry that can be shared. Only it's greed. It's the human nature. When you see, and this is exactly how the foreign policy of the United States work. They prey on, let's say, the continent Africa and their resources and the countries within that. They prey upon that country and keep those people poor, but take their resources. This is the exact same policy Canada has been practicing on First Nations. We have you there. We're going to take your resources and take advantage of all your resources so we can keep all the money. Now, the people, the continent Africa, are starting to rise up and say, no, these are our resources. These are ours, and we have to utilize some of that to give back to our people. And a lot of superpowers are pissed off. And this is what First Nations are doing in Canada too now. These are our resources. Give us access to them. We're not stopping you from having access to them. We just want to be part of our own resource. That's all. There's only one industry that did take away from the non-native fishermen, which was the Eller fishery, because there's only a certain amount of tonnage that can be caught without affecting the species. So 50% of that total allowable catch was taken away from non-native license holders and given to First Nation communities. Those license holders, they're millionaires, and they're crying and complaining and getting all the other non-native fishermen to hate on us. They've got to realize that license is ours. You just basically gave back a portion of our license. There's some communities that want the entire license. So be grateful you got 50%
Right.
and we got 50%.
Absolutely.
Not only that, it's 50% divided by 13 bands. That's thousands of people, where your 50% only goes to your crew and your pocket. Think about it. You're dividing 50% of the total catch between 10 people, but First Nations are dividing 50% of the catch to 100,000 people. Come on. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. I should have said it better. I do apologize for wording it wrong. But it's, to me, that's how it seems. In my opinion, that's how it seems. And I may be wrong, right? But yes, our fishing is our livelihood. That's
Yeah.
how we make our livelihood, along with hunting, along with trapping and picking medicines. And the way they're going about destroying the earth is making us hard. It makes it harder for our people to pick medicines and to fish and to hunt, because we don't know which animals or which plants that we pick medicines from are not dangerous or not toxic because of the overspillage from the tar sands or the water systems. It's so much more than that. And I wish non-Indigenous people would really open their eyes and listen when we speak. It's not about poor me. It's about the earth that we live on. The ecosystem that we have is failing. We need to bring this ecosystem back to what it was before. And
Yeah.
you had said something about modern day colonization, and it's modern day. It's colonization 2.0 is exactly what it is. And that's what it would have been had Paul Yam gotten into being prime minister. And I thank God Canada took gold that night.
Yeah.
Now we don't have to worry about what his policies are going to be.
When you think about the treaties, just look at Alberta for a second. Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territory. The premier of that province is actively trying to separate Alberta from the rest of Canada. When that's treaty territory. It was treaty territory before Alberta became Alberta. That's another example of a colonialist trying to ignore treaties that exist, that are upheld just to suit her needs, because she wants to be in bed with Donald Trump and give Alberta to Donald Trump. Like, when it's in favor of making money, when it's in favor of making greed to the 1%, First Nations are always the first to bear the brunt of those decisions.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the Proclamation number treaty, Proclamation of 1763. It says to share the land and resources. But in Section 35 of the Constitution in Canada, which we know as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it says to the depth of a plow. And nobody understands that that's only the top of the depth of a plow, and stop. You get only the minerals and the resources at the depth of a plow. That's it. But they have gone deeper, and that's the problem we're having. But
Yeah.
people keep drilling. When I hear drill, baby, drill in Alberta, where I live, it breaks my soul because you're chipping away more and our resources, our minerals. And not only that, our ecosystem gets damaged. Look at the tar sands in northern or central Alberta. I can't remember if it's central or northern. They have the tar sand explode and their water was non-drinkable. It wasn't drinkable for anybody. That's what they're not seeing. Premier Smith doesn't want to clean it up by herself. No, they're going to pay someone to do that. And it boggles my mind how little she knows, but how much power she has.
It's not because how little she knows. Oh, she knows. She just doesn't care. That is the difference. And that makes her a very dangerous actor. Now, Danielle Smith, I'm hoping there's legislation that's going to be introduced to Parliament because Danielle Smith shouldn't be going back and forth to Mar-a-Lago for any reasons. She's a member, she's a government official. So she's not, I know in the United States, they have legislations there in the United States that if you're a government official, you can't meet with other governments and start talking and negotiating. So Daniel Smith and Pierre Poilievre has got to be one of the greatest national security threats. And I hope to God that our parliament does the same thing that the German parliament did. They listed the ADF, the party that ran up second place in Germany, and they listed it as a high risk party, or I don't know what they did. But now, from now on, they'll be under higher scrutiny. And this is exactly what they need to do with the Conservative Federal Party. It is so right wing, it is so infiltrated, in my personal opinion, that they serve as a security threat to Canada. Why else would Daniel Smith be lowering the referendum level from 600,000 to what? 300,000 now? Like 20%. You're allowing from 40% down to 20%. So you're saying 20% of the province is going to make a decision for the rest of the 80% of the province. That is
Right.
not
So,
democracy. That is not representation. That is
wait,
total perversion of democracy.
but here's the thing. She did do that, yes. But here's the thing that doubles back on her. When it comes to a non-confidence vote, that also goes to the 20%. It doesn't go to 600 or 1,000 or whatever she needs. It only goes to, I think, the 300,000 that you were talking about. It only goes that far. So she did do this to hurt people, but she also hurt herself in the long run by doing that because it drops the amount of people that need to sign the non-confidence vote in her. So he did something bad, but she also did something good for the people of Alberta. She hurt Albertans by also doing something good for Albertans in a sense.
They
So
need
yeah,
to get their butts in order and get that done.
we're
Slap it right in.
trying, Calvin. We're trying to get around so much.
Paddling my canoe. What Daniel Smith is doing is opening people's eyes to treaties, like people who have never even thought of them before. How would you explain what a treaty is to someone who is new to the idea of treaties? Shouldn't be, but people are.
How would I explain treaties? Ooh, that is a long story. And I would start to explain that because it is our history. It goes back to the 1700s when the first treaties were signed. I would explain to them to do the learning process that this was an agreement, that we are not defeated people, we are not conquered people. This was an agreement in peace and friendship, our first treaty, to share resources. But I want them to understand it was through forced assimilation and genocide that our rights and our voices were lost. We did not just sign these treaties, walk away, and let settlers do what they want with this country. It was taken from us. So I think they have to understand that. And I want them to understand that our treaties are not just for the good of our First Nations people, but they are for the good of all Canadians. It is so we can live together in harmony and share the resources and to protect Mother. We all walk upon Mother. And as a matriarch and a female and a life giver, we honor our water. We honor grandfather. We honor grandmother. And we do this together. And the only way to live in harmony is to work together collectively and hear one another's voices and understand the importance of the treaties.
If I had to answer what is a treaty and how do I explain it to a person, there's so many treaties I can't. You'd have to identify one. But when you talk about all treaties in general, I would tell them this: look, the white people got tired of getting their asses kicked, so they wanted to make friends with us. We made friends, and we made an agreement, and we signed it to allow you to become a country. Enough said.
The way I would explain a treaty, if I can, it's a binding legal agreement between two nations, non-Indigenous and Indigenous people. That's what it is. It's a legal binding negotiation term that came about to share the land and resources. That is what it means, to share the land and resources. And yes, Calvin, you're right. We were kicking their butts and they got tired of it. Yes, I do understand that. But it's much more than that. It's much more than what we all think it is. It's to work together. It's to walk in both worlds, to understand everybody has different rights, different beliefs, different cultures. It's much more than anybody realizes. And I'm so glad that we can move forward in the reconciliation with people opening their eyes to the actual truth and just listening to us and just hearing our voices. That's all I want is for our people to have our voices heard and not be shut down all the time. Now the time is to move forward.
I just had another thought. Our treaties, the foundation of the formation of Canada. So you can't have Canada without our treaties, and we can't have treaties without Canada. And so
Right.
Danielle Smith right now is trying to separate from Canada. And if she does that, then there goes our treaties. Not our treaties here in Nova Scotia, but treaty 6, 7, and 8 will become null and void.
And 4 and 10.
Yeah,
You got to remember.
because those treaties are with Canada and the British Crown. So if they separate, then your treaties are null and void. I heard there's 5 chiefs that support Daniel Smith.
Yep.
There's
That
actually
is-
7.
7. Yep.
7. And we have the letter that she wrote that their names are on it.
That is ridiculous. That is the greatest betrayal of leadership from a First Nation. You're
Yep.
actively supporting a separatist that is going to eliminate any and everything that you stand for as a First Nation person. You're
Yep.
basically supporting the assimilation of all your treaty territory and all your people into the general masses. This is ridiculous. That is next level betrayal of your own people.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. But the thing is, this is what people have to understand. The corruption didn't come from within our community, within the nations. It didn't, with First Nations, it didn't come from inside the community. It came in with non-Indigenous people and government. That's what it was. It was the corruption. They just kept showing us, oh, we'll make you promises that we'll take care of you and all this. It's not the way people think it is. It's not that. They just want to extort us because they were using us as political pawns. They always have. But with Mark Carney, I think this is a big change that we need to shift the tables. I think that's what we need.
There's a comment here. Those same chiefs are at the rally right now. This is on TikTok. Is that the march of First Nations against Daniel Smith?
I do believe so. I
Yeah.
do believe
Well, I
so.
hope they wake up. I hope they wake up because what they were doing, whether they know it or not, is betraying all First Nations, but mostly the First Nations of the people that they govern over. You see, there's a lot of corruption in First Nations. It's not a joke, and it is very real. The electoral system and the band council system is a system imposed to us by the federal government. And because it was imposed to us, we transformed right from Indian agents controlling the community. Basically, the Indian agents were chief of the entire community. Non-native people lived in the community that ran the entire community. One non-native family that controlled all of it, all 5,000, 7,000 people. So we went from that system right to a band election system. And the band election system took those same concepts the way The Indian agents ran reservations and they just adopted it. So punishing people that speak out, punishing dissenters, only rewarding followers, and threatening people that and giving jobs to families, all of these mindsets. This is exactly how Indian agents ran the reservation.
Yeah.
Indian agents will have their little mouses come to them and tell them, oh, there's little whispers of here over there of this. And then the Indian agent will go and punish those people, give little tiny breadcrumbs for these little mice or these little rats. And that's the exact same mentality of First Nation systems right now. First Nations have to realize that they are still in a colonial system being ran by chief and council. That you have to get empowered and you have to demand more from your chief and council. You have to demand accountability. That's the only way that the corruption is going to stop. And I guarantee you, these 5 chiefs or 7 chiefs are bought and paid for by the oil executives and Daniel Smith. And this is why they got to lay in. Oh, money can only take you so far. Money can't hide you. Money can't take you and magically disappear you to a wonderful life in a castle somewhere. Eventually, you're going to have to face your people. You're going to have to face your neighbor. And I think these chiefs that are now at the protests against Daniel Smith now are realizing that your neighbor is looking at you. Your people
Right.
are looking at you.
Here's the letter. And this is written by Premier Daniel Smith. Dear Chief Knowlton, Grand Chief Mercredi, Grand Chief Desjardins, Chief Dixon, Chief Young, Chief Paquette, and Chief Whitney. Alberta continues to face challenges stemming from the last 10 years of the anti-resource and anti-development policies and legislations imposed by the federal government on our province. These hostile actions have drastically reduced the standard of living for all Albertans, including the Indigenous people of Alberta, which he has in all caps. I want to reinstate that as Premier, I will continue to fight with all that I have to protect both the constitutional sovereignty of the province of Alberta as well as the rights of First Nations living in Alberta. I also wish to reiterate that I share in my address to Albertans on May the 5th as Premier. I am entirely committed to protecting, upholding, and honoring the constitutional right of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. These include ensuring that any citizen-initiated referendum, if passed, must uphold and honor Treaties 6, 7, and 8. To reinsert this commitment to you, our government will be tabling an amendment to Bill 54 that states nothing in a referendum held under this act to be construed as arbitrating or derogating from any existing Aboriginal and treaty right of the Aboriginal people of Canada that are recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitutional Act 1982. In my same May 5th address, I laid out Albertans' expectations for the federal government to respect our province's constitutional sovereignty within Canada that will allow Albertans, including our Indigenous partners, to flourish. In order to move forward, the federal government must address the inequalities imposed upon Albertans with regards to equalization and federal transfers that sees tons of billions of tax dollars transferred out of Alberta to other parts of the country each year, primarily to provinces with economies larger than ours. The injustices has also hurt the First Nation people that call Alberta home. The federal government has utterly failed to provide funding and freedom to your nations in many areas, including water projects, infrastructures, healthcare, economic reconciliation, and empowering Indigenous people to chart their own course in areas such as education and policing. From our part, the Albertan government strongly believes in and wants to facilitate First Nations prosperity and self determination in line with your strongly held values and beliefs. We are proud of the work done to date, including that of the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, Indigenous policing initiatives, forestry partnerships, as well as other initiatives, and are looking forward to more opportunities to work together in the future. With our treasured partnership in mind, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to meet with me in these matters and accompany an Alberta delegation to Ottawa on a future date to advocate that Alberta, including First Nations in Alberta, receive our fair share of federal funding. We also see the opportunity for the creation of a new national, here we go, energy corridor in partnership with First Nations, leading to future prosperity for all Albertans. Taking this case to Ottawa in a united fashion would send a powerful message on behalf of all the people we represent that our contributions to Canada will not be taken for granted any longer by the federal government. Together, we are a powerful force for prosperity, unity, and leadership. I hope we can walk this path together for everyone we respect. Sincerely, Danielle Smith. Wow. I had a hard time reading some of that because I wanted to scream. Some of the things that she mentioned are provincial responsibilities, not federal responsibilities. Smarshy, you live in Alberta.
Oh God.
Oh, God is right. I am just foaming, right? With just, I want to get out and like protest and bring our Indigenous people together to say, wait a minute, we need to shut this down now. How are you feeling after hearing that letter and being an Albertan?
Embarrassed as all can be and try to use TikTok friendly language. Being Albertan and Indigenous in this country at this time with the current devil or the current antichrist, I call her, that we have in office. Not only to mention she's my premier, she is also my MLA. So when everyone tells me to write to my MLA, I say I'm a little afraid to do that right now because I don't know how I would write it without going to jail. Because there's things I would like to say to this woman, but I can't. And as an Indigenous person in Alberta, I am terrified. I am looking for any way to get out of Alberta right now because I'm not safe. No one's safe in Alberta if you're Indigenous, because what that means to me is we'll talk a big game. We'll say everything that you want to hear, and we'll get you to go where we need you to go. And as soon as that's over, we don't need you anymore. You're on your own. I had talked to someone about a video that was going on, and if Alberta separates, Indigenous people will have their own hospital. Why do we need our own hospital? Yeah, exactly, Mo. My exact thoughts were shaking my head back and forth, and I was like, that's not a thing that should be in your mind. We need to get Indigenous people out of like schools, and they need to earn their positions. Why are we getting people out of positions that they're qualified for? It seems to me more and more that what she's talking about and the people she's really focusing in on saving is the white, that being non-Indigenous people. And that's the only people she wants to save. Doesn't matter how many immigrants or how many people coming here seeking refugee, asylum, or immigration. We're all a target to her. That's all she can use us for is political. And right now, and all it will ever be is lip service for me. As an Albertan scared, I am like trying to figure a way to get out of Alberta. There is no solution other than to get her out of office and get someone new, the NDP, like Ned Denchi, because he actually gives a crap about our people and about the constituents. Because if you aren't for the constituents, this is not a dog you deserve to be in, or a title you deserve to call yourself. Thank you.
My take on that letter is that is some of the fanciest bullshit I've ever heard. Like, honestly, she knows very well that a lot of our First Nation chiefs are uneducated. And so if a First Nation chief that was uneducated and didn't have advisors that are educated might see that letter and be like, oh my God, Daniel Smith wants to take care of us. But an educated mind on treaties and the structure of Canada and negotiating contracts will look at that letter and say, oh shit. That paragraph, it says, we are committed for the First Nation to have, it says something about constitutional rights. That means First Nations are going to have the same exact rights as non First Nations. There's no distinction between you two anymore. Hello? Duh. She's telling you right in the freaking letter that your rights as First Nations are going to be gone and your constitutional rights, just like everybody else, is going to be the exact same. Next, it does this fancy dance about upholding your treaties and stuff like that. But she knows very well that if she separates Alberta from Canada, there is no treaties. So that's another bullshit line. And then she's talking about marching up, join us, march up to Ottawa and help us argue about equalization payments and corridors. She's using First Nation people as a prop, as a tool to pressure the federal government. She's using you. Can't you see it? You're a token Indian. She's using you as a token Indian to march up to Ottawa to argue on her behalf when you don't have a clue what you're arguing about for. That's all. She's using you. She's using you as a token Indian. She's promising you she's not touching your trees when she knows well ahead legally if she separates, there goes your treaty. And plus, she tells you that constitutionally you're going to be just like everybody else. So no more First
Yeah.
Nations in Alberta if they separate.
And no more First Nations needs here Inuit rights are going to be upheld. We
None.
just got our self-governance not too long ago for our Métis community. What does that mean, as Alberta Jig said? And the way I see it, I do like the chiefs that stood up here and said, you know what, if you don't like it in Canada, leave. You don't like it, get it, leave, pack your bags. The last thing they said to her before they ended the press conference, rent is due, Danielle, pay up. And they stopped right there.
That message really needs to go to the chiefs that you're
Yeah.
being used as a prop. You're told straight in the freaking letter that you're going to have the same rights as everybody else in Alberta, both native and non-native. And she knows legally that if she separates, your treaties are gone. So, like, hopefully somebody's advising those chiefs, somebody with an education that is from those communities, and basically telling those chiefs to smarten the hell up.
If I may touch on this a little more, you did say there are chiefs that are uneducated because they don't have a level of education. Did you know if any Indigenous person wanted to get a further education, they had to give up their status first before they could do it? Because nobody wanted a smart, in their terms, nobody wanted a smart Indian. They wanted to keep us uneducated. And that's why they did what they did. And this is why we're having the problems we're having with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, because it went all across the board. It is so deplorable that these chiefs are falling for it because it's like falling into a trap with a snake oil salesman. That's exactly what it is.
And these chiefs that are supporting her, they're going to regret it for the rest of their lives because all their community members will be pointing at them. You screwed up our lives. You made us regular non-Indigenous citizens. And your children and your whole legacy will be remembered in history as you damned your own people.
And
I
status goes away.
I want to tell our brothers and sisters of Alberta that we're with them, that we're united across Canada, and we stand with you. We can't allow your right to be taken. And we need to watch this closely because, as we know, the most racial document that we have in this country is the Indian Act. Actually, one thing that Canada did, do you know apartheid was based on the Indian Act from Canada?
Yep.
I was shocked when I found that out. I was like, why? But now our government is proposing to get rid of the Indian Act, which, yes, it has to be gone, but to bring in UNDRIP. And if you really pay attention to UNDRIP, maybe we can do another segment about UNDRIP on its own. it will remove most of our rights and make us the same as every other Canadian.
Yeah. I hope, you guys are getting a hold of the chiefs.
I am wondering if each of you could maybe take a few seconds each just to give your final thoughts, and hopefully everybody can like and share and also subscribe to the YouTube. Final thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody. I want everybody across Canada, Indigenous and non Indigenous, to know that times are changing and we have to work together. We have to work together, not just for ourselves in this generation, but for the next 7 generations. And we do see hope and prosperity. We need to keep Canada united, and we can do it. Don't be scared to speak up in your communities to your chiefs and to your elected representatives. Your voice matters. And in order to overcome trauma, we need to take back our power. That's how we overcome trauma. And I know we can do it. And I just want to say much love and many blessings, everyone.
In closing, Mark Carney and his cabinet are going to do what they're going to have to do to secure as best they can Canada. The rest of us have to play our part to get our provinces in line. I know in Nova Scotia, we have a huge fight coming, and it's between the Conservative government, Tim Houston, and he wants to mine uranium here, and he's just bulldozing through it, no consultation, nothing, ignoring treaties, everything. So it's not what's happening in Alberta is not isolated. Rise up, demand more from your chiefs. Shake your chief. I don't want to tell you to shake your chief into reality. Explain to them that this letter is entrapping you. This letter is telling you one thing. You're thinking it's telling you one thing, but it's actually doing something else. You're betraying your own people. You're betraying the people you grew up with, the people you're in charge to take care of. Wake up. This is a fight that we have to win. That's all.
I would just like to say, as Calvin had said, this is a fight that we have to win. It's not we have to win. We will win this fight. We will rise and we will stand up again. And I thank every Indigenous person and non-Indigenous person that stands with the Indigenous and non-Indigenous in Alberta, because we will win. Good will prevail. We proved that on election night. Now let's prove it again that Canada can unite and can stay together, because we need to do this. We need to do this for everyone, not just Indigenous people, all the other non-Indigenous people out there. We need to do this for them and them alone, and our children's children and their children's children and our grandchildren and everyone around us. I just want to say, Kimmy Witch, I love you all. You are very important people. And just remember to take your water, take a breath, go take a walk. And please, if you have to take medication, supplements, or anything, just take a breath. Just remember, one step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day. We got through the election just fine. It was a little sketchy, but we got through that, and we'll get through this as well. And I thank you so much, Polly, for allowing us to have this voice and allowing us to get this out, because if we didn't have this, I don't think anyone would know what was going on. So just remember, Antichrist out, get someone in that actually cares about constituents. And I love you all. Good night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Hashtag.
Please subscribe and follow these wonderful people on TikTok. We have Smarshy, and what's your handle, Calvin?
Calvin Stevens 1.
And Paddling My Canoe. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Good night.